Hello and welcome back to the Patio C channel, and today on the show I'm going to be doing my round 1 review. It's going to be a bit late, but I thought better late than never, may as well get a video out for you guys. First time in ages actually, so we'll get straight into it. So I'm going to go over like the best game of the round, the best performance, the best debutant, probably only applicable to round 1 really, because that's when you get the most of them. Rising Star Awards, and then a quick ladder review. I'm not sure if I'm just going to do this for round 1 or do it for all the rounds. I'm probably going to do more content that I don't have to do weekly, because then I don't feel like I have to do it, and I might enjoy just making content that I want to do more, if that makes sense. So we'll get straight into it. Now for the best game, I've gone Carlton vs Richmond. It was actually a really good game, and it was close the whole way through. I wasn't actually able to watch the whole game, but it was close for pretty much the whole way through, from the first quarter to the last quarter, and obviously it finished in a very exciting manner. Carlton probably could have won by a few goals, but Richmond were able to keep it closer than what it probably should have been at the end. Carlton were very inaccurate with their goal kicking in the last quarter. However, Richmond did well to not concede as many goals as what they probably should have. So that was my best game. I'm pretty sure it was the closest game of the round, and the next closest was Geelong Saints, which was a bit of a crappy game anyway compared to this one. And then for the best performance of the round, I've got Caleb Serong versus Brisbane. Probably not a massive surprise. 46 disposals, 7 tackles and 10 clearances is just absolutely massive. Obviously had a huge impact on the game against Brisbane. I didn't watch the game, but it sounded like he played one of the best games, probably the best performance of the year so far, which is a bit more impressive than what it would have been last year, because there's already been a few games beforehand. But yeah, he did well, and 46 disposals is an absolute massive feat for someone of his age and for any player. Okay, now moving on to the best club debut. So I've got a few players here. So this can be a player who's already debuted, but they've gotten traded and they've debuted at the new club. So I've gone with Ginnivan with 2 goals and 17 disposals. Obviously electric. Brought a lot of energy to the Hawks forward line and excitement. Then I'm probably going to butcher this massively. Massimo D'Ambrosio came from Essendon, obviously, to the Hawthorn Hawks. He had 29 touches on the weekend, which was a career high for him, so that's an absolute outstanding performance for him. Should be able to hold his spot for next week, and probably one of the better players on the ground for the Hawks. Then I've got Ivan Soldo, who had 28 hitouts, 6 clearances and 2 goals, which is just an absolute massive display for a big ruckman like him. Coming over from Richmond to Port Adelaide, he's had an outstanding first game, obviously against an opposition that might be able to let him get a bit more of the footy or have a bit more of an impact than he might have against other clubs, but let's see. We'll have to wait and see until Port Adelaide play a quality opposition to see how he goes. But good performances from all of those guys. And now for my best debutants, so playing their first ever game anywhere, I've gone with Colby McKercher with 22 disposals and 478 metres gained. Obviously went to North Melbourne last year in the draft, and it was either pick 2 or 3. I don't really follow the draft as intensely as other blokes, but I know it was either pick 2 or pick 3, and he had an absolute blinder for a debut anyway. 22 disposals, 478 metres gained against an opposition that is probably one of the best teams in the comp, so he looked really good. And then, so surprising result for me, probably not a surprise, Sydney demolished Collingwood. It was probably in between this one and Freo, and the only deciding factor was that Sydney were away and Freo were at home. So Sydney demolished Collingwood, and they absolutely smashed them really. We'll have a look at the stats they won. They beat them on disposal efficiency, efficiency inside 50, stoppage clearances, uncontested possessions. They had less turnovers, 10 more marks inside 50, 21 more tackles, and more tackles inside 50. And they had 15 more 1%ers, which are pretty important as well. So they were just doing the little things better than the Pies, really. And they didn't even have... They had a little bit more of the ball, but they lost the contested possessions. But they were still able to... The most important thing was that when they had the ball, they were efficient with it, while Collingwood obviously weren't efficient enough with the ball in hand. And then, of course, we'll go on to the Rising Star nominee, Oliver Dempsey. He had 3 goals from 5 shots on goal. And the last two were probably pretty hard. One of them was pretty easy, but he still played a really good game, and the last one was from the pocket, which was pretty difficult for any player. Then he had 15 touches and 7 marks, and he had a really good game. He looked really exciting. As a Cats fan, I thought he played really well. Probably only made one obvious mistake in the first quarter, but other than that, he played a really good game. So now we'll move on to the ladder review and have a look at what it looks like after the first round for most teams and the first 2 games for some other teams. So out of the teams that have played 2 games, Brisbane and Collingwood are the only ones who have not won one. Along with Richmond, of course, but they were probably unlucky against Carlton, so it's not... I think it's actually worse for Brisbane and Collingwood going 0-2, because Richmond have actually been close in both games compared to Collingwood, and it's probably not as bad for Brisbane either, because they've been close, but Brisbane sort of lost to a bit of a mediocre opposition on the weekend against Freo. Well, that's just inferring from what we saw from them last year. Obviously, they could have played really well, and it might have been a really impressive performance, because we don't know how good Brisbane really are yet. They showed good signs against Carlton, and they showed pretty good signs in the first quarter against Freo, but other than that, they've been a bit average. And then so Giants and Sydney and Gold Coast have all won 2 games, so they were all perched pretty nicely, along with Carlton, of course. And then for the rest of the teams that have only played 1 game, Port Adelaide have the highest percentage out of all of them, and then the top 8 looks like this. So Giants and Sydney round up the top 2, and then Gold Coast and Carlton finish off the top 4, and then Port Adelaide in 5th, Fremantle in 6th, Essendon in 7th, and Melbourne in 8th. And then Geelong are just outside in 9th, but they also won their game and they're out on percentage. So it's relatively even for the teams that have lost, like Adelaide, who lost are only 21% behind Geelong, which could easily be made up this week against them at Adelaide Oval. So that'll be interesting to see. That'll be an interesting clash between the 2 teams. And then obviously the bottom 10, probably not as significant, but we've got Adelaide in 10th, St Kilda in 11th, Brisbane in 12th, Hawthorn in 13th, Richmond in 14th, Collingwood in 15th, North Melbourne in 16th, Doggies in 17th, and West Coast in 18th, and of course Geelong in 9th position. So it's hard to really infer anything from the teams that have only played 1 game. But the Giants definitely look good. The Swans are going to be scary when they get Adams and Luke Parker back, and Callum Mills from injury. Carlton definitely look good. Gold Coast, I'm still iffy on them. I don't think they'll make finals. They haven't really shown me enough yet. That's just for me anyway. I just think they're probably going to run out of gas. I think they'll run out of gas halfway, maybe 3/4 into the season like Carlton did, but we'll have to wait and see. Plus, they've beaten Richmond, who are okay at best. They've looked okay at best, I reckon, Richmond. And they beat they beat Adelaide, who only played 1.5 quarters, or not even 1 quarter, almost half a quarter, and they got within a goal. So we'll have to wait and see with the Suns. I reckon we won't really know until we've seen them play a few more games, but they look alright. And then out of the other teams, I can't really determine if they look good or not. I mean, Geelong were pretty average at times and pretty good at times against St Kilda. Essendon and Hawthorn it wasn't a bad game actually. Essendon looked okay. Fremantle, that's a pretty big win against Brisbane. But yeah, so that's my round 1 review, and thank you for watching this video on the Paddy OC channel, and I'll see you next time.